When I was recognized and brought back to the Marquis's manor, I had already been kept as someone's mistress for 3 years. As I wept and recounted my story, my parents remained silent. My younger brother mocked me, and the fake young mistress laughed behind her handkerchief, until I lowered my head and mentioned, "That man has a courtesy name, Rong Pei." After a moment of dead silence, the Marquis knocked over the teacup in his hand. The fake young mistress was dumbfounded, and most of all, the high and mighty Marchioness turned completely pale. Just then, a cold, indifferent voice came from outside the door. The aloof and upright air of the Marquis lifted the curtain and walked in.
"Mother, why did you summon me?"
Upon hearing this voice, the already pale Marchioness grew even more unsteady on her feet. She took my hand, shoved me into the inner room, and pleaded,
"The two of you must not meet for now."
Before I could recover from the shock, I was instantly hidden behind the screen.
"Mother."
Su Rongpei spoke with slight confusion. The Marchioness took a breath, before asking with a trembling voice,
"Rong Pei, your frequent trips to Jiangnan lately, is there some official business? I heard the ladies there are very gentle. Have you perhaps met a woman you fancy?"
The man opposite her cut her off with an air of calm indifference.
"Mother, you are overthinking. I only went with a few close friends to handle some official affairs. How could I have time for anything else?"
The Marchioness was instantly rendered speechless. It wasn't that she hadn't investigated, but this eldest son of hers was extremely meticulous. In this capital city where romantic affairs were considered charming anecdotes, Su Rongpei had instead hidden me incredibly deep. The external residence was entirely guarded by his loyal shadow guards, and the meals in the small kitchen were delivered by dedicated personnel. Even on the rare occasions I went out, Su Rongpei would always accompany me. Hearing this, the Marquis was somewhat relieved.
"Since that is the case, it must be a misunderstanding. There are many people in this world with the same name."
He patted the Marchioness's shoulder comfortingly.
However, Rong Pei is now a first-rank official, and he has reached the age to take a wife.
The position of the heir's consort should also be decided. The third brother also teased.
Yes, indeed. Once eldest brother marries a sister-in-law, someone will keep him in check, so he won't be running outside every day.
Su Rongpei remained silent for a long moment, before finally nodding in agreement. "Then I shall trouble mother to look out for me." For a time, everyone in the manor was delighted. Su Rongrong even took his arm coquettishly.
Eldest brother, don't be so busy now that you're home. Stay for a few more days.
"All right."
I heard a guest just arrived at the manor. Have you found second sister?
Su Rongpei's tone was calm. Toward this sister of mine, he was entirely indifferent. Only now did everyone remember me. Without the previous misunderstanding, the Marchioness felt guilty, and hurriedly called me out. Su Rongrong wrung her handkerchief. She was born beautiful.
Eldest brother won't stop doting on Rongrong once he sees her, right?
The third brother also clamored.
Eldest brother, you mustn't play favorites. What did we agree on back then? We only recognized second sister as our sister.
The former was caught between tears and laughter, and stroked her hair.
"In my heart, you are my only sister. No one can surpass you. Those from small, low-born families in the countryside have the most schemes. Don't let her bully you."
In the next second, his gaze met mine, and his body suddenly stiffened. By now, I had also recovered my composure, so I gave a well-mannered curtsy, and addressed him just as Su Rongrong did. "Greetings, eldest brother." Fortunately, Su Rongpei had only snatched me away, and kept me in his outer residence, but had not touched me yet. Otherwise, if the truth were really spoken aloud, wouldn't the Marchioness have fainted on the spot? I couldn't help but smile faintly. Su Rongpei's face was deathly pale, his hands trembling slightly inside his sleeves. Seeing that he did not answer, I followed the Marchioness's wishes, poured a cup of tea myself, and handed it to him with lowered eyes. "I will have to trouble brother to look after me in the future." His throat was dry, and his lips twitched, but in the end, he could not utter a word. He didn't take my tea either, but simply said he had business to attend to, and hurriedly walked away. The Marchioness felt a bit awkward, and said tactfully,
"Mingzi, don't take it to heart. He just has a rather cold temperament."
I shook my head. "It is no matter." The third brother rolled his eyes at me, and exposed the truth mercilessly.
Mother, big brother simply loathed her. Did she really think the Marquis's manor is that easy to enter? Since she chose to return, she must endure these grievances.
I made no sound. After returning to my room, I called Xiao Tao over, and handed a secret letter to her. "Go to Chao family town in Jiangnan, and bring back a girl surnamed Chao." Xiao Tao hesitated.
Will her return at this time stir up trouble? After all, she looks so much like the Marchioness.
I remained silent for a long moment, then shook my head. "No, it won't. If they had paid even a bit of attention to me, their biological daughter, they would have noticed something was amiss by now. Besides, with Chao Anhe left there alone, I cannot feel at ease. The Marquis's manor owes her in the first place. Why should she be left out of this?" I dismissed the servants, and fell into a hazy sleep. In my dream, it was still my past life. That cold and noble man held me from behind, and sighed softly.
"Mingzi, bear me a child, and I will give you an official status, all right?"
"No, absolutely not. He had deceived me once before. I could not let him deceive me a second time. I remembered that the snow was falling heavily, and the blood beneath me spread out, like a blooming flower of blood. The heir's consort smiled as she reached out and poked my head. You. Of all things to learn, why did you have to become someone's kept woman? My mother-in-law didn't want to keep this child either, which is why she sent me here to handle it. My eyes suddenly welled with tears, and my mind became somewhat blurred. Why on earth did I insist on doing such an embarrassing thing back then? They all said it was my fault. So it must indeed have been my fault, right? Before I fainted, I saw Surongpei rushing toward me from afar. When I woke up again, he was clutching my hand tightly. My throat was terribly dry. The child, was it the heir's consort? He cut me off calmly.
You hurt your head. It is normal for your memories to be muddled. The child was lost because you carelessly slipped and fell.
Surongpei met my cold eyes, pursed his lips slightly, and leaned down to embrace me.
We will have other children.
I said, "Can you investigate it for me?" He said nothing, only tightening his embrace around me. My heart grew weary. That matter dissipated like willow catkins in the wind. Later, he treated me better and better. Surongpei looked at me, smiling as he smiled and teased me.
Look at you. What kind of fox demon reincarnation are you? To make it so that I truly can never let you go.
I suddenly felt so tired. Using the last ounce of my strength, I glared at him intensely. It wasn't me. It wasn't my fault at all. My voice choked up with sobs. I had a fiancé. We were about to be married. He hadn't seen me lose my temper in a long time, and he was slightly taken aback. Then he let out a cold, thin laugh.
If you hadn't deliberately seduced me back then, why would I have borne such infamy to imprison you for over a decade, only to end up estranged from my formal wife?
I froze for a long time, then nodded. Put that way, it seemed he wasn't in the wrong. Other maids chimed in.
The formal wife is indeed innocent, having married into the Marquis's household for so long. Not only has she not conceived, but even when her husband keeps a woman outside, she can only pretend not to know.
I nodded as well. Put that way, she wasn't in the wrong either. So the one in the wrong shouldn't be me, right? Back then, I accompanied my fiancé to the capital for the imperial examinations. On the way, we came across a heavily injured man. Both of us were believers in Buddhism, who believed in good deeds and karma. Chiyu didn't know how to swim, so I jumped into the water and pulled the man out. After Surongpei woke up, he thanked us in a low voice. Chiyu smiled and took my hand.
My young lady is kind-hearted. There is no need for thanks.
The latter's gaze lingered on my face. From then on, that single glance became an eternity. Later, he forcefully snatched another man's wife and locked me away for over a decade. If the one in the wrong was me, I couldn't fathom why. From then on, I fell gravely ill. When the illness reached its end, Surongpei was left with no other choice but to officially marry me into the Marquis's household. In the Marquis's household, I met another girl, a girl whose situation was similar to mine, unable to control her own destiny at every turn. She said her name was Chao Anhe. I asked, "You are the daughter of the Marquis's household. Why do you say your last name is Chao?" She shook her head. "I am not the daughter of the Marquis's household. I have no family." She pondered for a moment and added, "And I never will." I understood why she said that. 6 years ago, her marriage had just been ruined by the fake daughter, leaving her reputation in tatters. Now she was 25. And had become a well-known old maid in the area. The Marchioness was worried sick. In the interim, she had arranged a few matches for her, but they were all politely declined by her. Chao Anhe leaned against my shoulder. "He lied to me and ended up marrying my sister. Now he wants me to enter the household as his second wife. Xia Mingxi. I don't want to marry him." Her voice was muffled. I said, "All right, then don't marry him. At worst, I will go and beg your brother." She didn't speak. After a long time, a patch of cold wetness seeped through my shoulder. That was the last time I saw her. Later on, I heard that she had died. She died on her wedding night. Her husband used a bedchamber maid to humiliate her, and she threw herself against the wall. I failed to save her, but I had clearly begged Surongpei. For the first time, I knelt and begged him. I said, "She is your own biological sister. You cannot be this heartless." He remained silent for a long time.
All right.
But in the end, he still lied to me. When I received the news, I was just leaning back in the rocking chair, not opening my eyes. A maid whispered,
Do you think Our Lady might follow her and pass away too?
Surongpei suddenly flew into a rage.
Shut up. All of you, get the hell out.
A teacup shattered on the floor. With a face full of pleading, he held me tight.
Mingxi, don't be like this. Please open your eyes, all right? Rongrong's son and daughter are still so young. They need someone to look after them. I originally planned to wait until they were a bit older, and then arrange for Anhe to fake her death and leave the manor.
He wanted to explain, but the most useless thing in this world is an explanation. I was far too ill, and I truly did not want to open my eyes to look at him anymore.
Mingxi, you cannot treat me like this. You owe me. You owe me for the rest of your life.
I could no longer hear his words clearly. I only wondered, did Chao An-hee suffer this much when she passed away? During our most painful year, we both wished for a next life. When I opened my eyes again, we had truly reached the next life. The first thing I did after being reborn was send people to search for her whereabouts. It just so happened that she was searching for me too. At that time, I was still trapped in the outer residence, but she had not returned to the Marquis's manor. I could die, but she had to be happy. I stuffed a bag of silver into her hands and shouted loudly, "Chao An-hee, go forward and don't look back." But in the end, she still turned back, her face covered in tears. She ran over and hugged me tightly.
But what about you, Xia Mingxi? What will I do if you die?
She stuffed the jade pendant of the Marquis's manor into my hand.
You are smarter than me. Take this jade pendant and go find them at the Marquis's manor. At least with the identity of the Marquis's daughter, you won't have to be trapped in the outer residence for over a decade and live as someone's mistress anymore.
At that moment, a sudden wave of hatred washed over me. Why is it that those who hurt us can continue to live in peace, while we, even in another life, can only flee in such a wretched state? So, I agreed. Chao An-hee had been an orphan since childhood and longed for the warmth of family, but I did not. The Marquis's manor is cold and indifferent. Chao An-hee would feel sad, but I would not. Moreover, Su Rongpei was still in that manor. In the past, he could oppress me in every way and humiliate me, but now I had assumed the identity of his younger sister. On one hand, I would no longer allow him to manipulate me. On the other hand, I could seek revenge for Chao An-hee against the Marquis's manor. I could absolutely take advantage of that sliver of affection he had for me. The last look Su Rongpei gave me was incredibly dark, filled with shock and a deep sense of unwillingness. I closed my eyes and let out a heavy sigh of relief. Fortunately, in this lifetime, I would no longer have any entanglement with him. I slept very soundly that night. Chao An-hee was already on her way back to the capital. I calculated the time carefully and sent Xiao Tao out to meet her. From now on, she would stay with me and watch those people get their retribution one by one. The courtyard the Marquis's manor assigned to me was just like in my past life, dilapidated and desolate, overgrown with weeds, with even the red paint peeling off. The maid asked in a low voice,
Miss, should we clear the weeds ourselves?
I shook my head. No. The maid found a few shovels and handed one to me.
That is wonderful. If Madam finds out, she will surely feel sorry for you, miss.
I frowned and repeated myself. I said no. Has the Marquis's manor fallen into such ruin? I am, after all, the legitimate eldest daughter. Why should I do manual labor alongside you? Or rather, why should I have to live in this dilapidated courtyard? Her face turned pale. I calmly patted her cheek, my tone suddenly shifting. I don't care who your master is. Go call the steward over. Otherwise, regarding this matter, I will go ask the Marquis myself. The person who came was a middle-aged woman, surnamed Kui. I made 2 demands. First, sell off all the servants in this courtyard, and I will choose the new ones myself. Second, assign me a different courtyard. Amidst a chorus of wailing and crying, Steward Kui stared at me for a long time. I asked in response, do I not have this right? She hesitated before saying,
You do. However, Madam will also learn of your ruthlessness. Your position is awkward. Why not take this old servant's advice? Endure it, and this too shall pass. As time goes on, what could possibly triumph over the bond of blood?
That is how the saying goes, but I refuse to accept it. In our past life, Chao An-hee's hands were covered in scars, large and small. Some from doing chores herself, others from scalding herself while boiling water. I wanted to drag her along to punish the servants. She shook her head. Last night, Mother already reprimanded them on my behalf. She even praised me for being sensible and considerate, far more mature than Su Rongrong, who only knows how to act spoiled. When she said this, she was clearly smiling, yet the expression on her face was more painful than crying. When it came to changing courtyards, Steward Kui grew anxious, because the one I had chosen is the room of that fake young lady. Su Rongrong was furious. She rushed out to scold me.
If you keep bullying me, I will leave the Marquis's manor. Anyway, I'm not the legitimate daughter. Staying here is just an eyesore.
I asked, then why haven't you gotten lost yet? I have returned, and seeing you makes me very uncomfortable. Shouldn't you be the one to leave? When saying this, my tone was completely flat. I truly could not understand. Why did she always take everything so much for granted, taking Chao An-hee as family, as if it were her right? And, just before dying of illness in our past life, demanding that Chao An-hee become the successor wife. The reason behind this question seemed beyond Su Rongrong's comprehension as well. Her lips turned completely pale. The wet nurse beside her was livid.
To think I even nursed you back then, miss. How have you become so vicious and cruel now?
She raised her hand, about to slap my face. Surangrong looked on expectantly. In the next instant, a folding fan flew through the air, slashing a gash across the nurse's hand. Amidst the nurse's screams of pain, a figure in black robes flashed by. Surongpei calmly stepped in front of me, shielding me.
What is going on here?
He turned his head to ask Surangrong. How absurd. He was the one who hurt Surangrong's person. Yet he turned around and asked her what was wrong. I could barely hold back my laughter. When Surangrong looked up and saw me, her face turned green with rage. She aggrievedly took hold of Surongpei's arm.
Brother, you hurt my nanny.
The latter swept a fleeting glance over me. Seeing that I was unharmed, he let out an imperceptible sigh of relief.
She is but a servant, so what if she was struck? You must not indulge your servants like this in the future. They are nearly climbing over your head. If word of this gets out, it will not be good for your reputation.
Surongpei's tone softened. As he patted her head, Surangrong could only pout and mutter.
Oh, then brother, accompany me on a spring outing. I want that magnolia hairpiece set.
Very well.
I narrowed my eyes. Surongpei indeed knew how to smooth things over. With just a few words, he diffused the conflict. That will not do. I slowly raised my eyes. Since second sister is getting the hairpiece set, can she let me have the courtyard? Surangrong was already pulling Surongpei away. But hearing this, she was furious. She scolded me, saying I was dreaming.
Brother, just now, she was the one trying to snatch my courtyard. It was this wench who started.
Surongpei frowned. Rarely did his face turn cold, as he reprimanded her.
Shut your mouth, for a young lady of a noble house. How can you be so ill-mannered? She has just arrived at the Marquis's manor, so it is only natural she does not understand these things. Why must you lose your temper with her?
Not knowing why he was so furious, Surangrong's eyes immediately welled with tears.
Brother, you are biased. I do not want that hairpiece set anymore, nor am I going on the spring outing with you.
Lifting her skirt, she ran back into her room. The carriage was already prepared. Since she threw a tantrum and refused to go, didn't that play right into my hands? I found it both funny and annoying. Sure enough, a weary Surongpei massaged his temples, then turned to look at me.
Do you truly want that courtyard?
I stared at him in silence. His voice was strangely gentle.
I really cannot give you that courtyard, but I can take you on the spring outing. Will you go?
I looked out the window. A flight of white egrets was skimming over the branches. After a long pause, I smiled. I am sorry. Mingzi accidentally sprained her ankle last night, so I cannot accompany brother. He said he could not give me that courtyard. But that very day, he dispatched several servants to help me renovate another one. The new courtyard was very similar in scale and interior decor to Surangrong's, and was even slightly superior to hers. When the servants carried in several pots of vibrant orchids, Chao Anhe stood by my side. She sighed.
Our eldest brother has always treated you well. But Xia Mingxi, you deserve his kindness.
I snapped out of my thoughts. I knew Chao Anhe felt a bit envious. I took her hand and spoke softly. Chao Anhe, this is not kindness. He is merely weighing his options. If he truly protected me with all his heart, he would not have suppressed the matter from that day. Her eyes were dark and deep. I sighed. In the future, when you meet someone who truly treats you well, you will understand. Chao Anhe looked somewhat despondent.
I have never met anyone like that.
She fell silent. I lowered my head, picked up the shears, and trimmed the orchid plant. Snip by snip, I understood the words she left unsaid. There had been someone who treated her very well before, but in the end, he caused her death. By coincidence, only a few days later, I met that person. At the tea house, the waiter respectfully led me to the private room on the top floor. This meeting was secretly arranged by Surangrong. I knew she couldn't wait any longer. These past few days, young General Cheng had been sending me gifts on and off. Sometimes flowers, sometimes cute wooden carvings or clay figurines. The gifts weren't expensive, but they were enough to touch the heart of an anxious and lonely girl. It was just like this in her past life. What Chao Anhe originally thought was her salvation ultimately pushed her into the abyss. Beyond redemption. I clenched my fists tight. Just as I was about to push open the door of the private room, giggling voices suddenly came from inside. Surangrong asked softly, "Do you think she'll come?" Another lazy male voice rang out.
She definitely will. Don't worry, Rongrong. She must be charmed by now. I used to think she'd be hard to please, so I chose the gifts very carefully.
He sneered.
But in the end, those jewelry sets I sent, she accepted all of them. She didn't even politely decline once. I've never seen such a materialistic woman. If it weren't for you, who would want to get close to her?
Surangrong said resentfully.
I don't know what is so good about her either. Even elder brother shields her. You must help me get back at her.
The latter smiled strangely.
Well, isn't she here already?
There was nothing else worth listening to, so I pushed open the door of the private room. I bowed gracefully and said, "My apologies, I'm late." He turned around lazily. Upon meeting my eyes, he was suddenly startled and stood up abruptly.
Sigh, sister-in-law.
Because he was too shocked, his words were mumbled and unclear. Su Rongrong frowned.
What? Do you two know each other?
I raised my eyes slightly. Not really. I don't quite remember. Young General Cheng, however, was not nearly as calm. His eyes were filled with astonishment, and he asked with a trembling voice.
Rongrong. You said this is your fourth sister, the legitimate daughter of the Marquis mansion who was lost for years. Your biological sister.
He emphasized that last part specifically. Su Rongrong was already resentful about this matter, and her face turned even darker upon hearing this.
Chengdu, what do you mean by that? Yes, she is the legitimate daughter of the Marquis mansion, while I am nothing.
She was clearly a bit angry. Young General Cheng didn't have time to comfort her. He pointed at me, speechless.
But you and Su Rongpei.
I looked at him quietly. My brother and I get along harmoniously. Does young General Cheng have a problem with that? He was choked up. Su Rongrong interrupted with some displeasure.
All right. Why bring up all this nonsense? Since you're here, you two should have a good chat.
But I don't know what to talk about. I smiled slightly. Young General Cheng, is it inappropriate for me to accept the jewelry sets you sent? Would that be inappropriate? I lowered my head. After all, they are quite valuable. If you regret it. Chengdu waved his hands in a hurry.
No, not at all. What I sent you is yours. There is no need to be so polite with me.
I nodded. Over the years, he had received much patronage from Su Rongpei, and the two were close friends. Over time, after he learned of my existence by Su Rongpei's side, he would also frequently send things over. The two of them would occasionally chat, so there was nothing wrong with him taking extra care of me, right? But he couldn't say these words to Su Rongrong. The latter's eyes turned red with anger, and she glared at him with hatred. I smiled. If there is nothing else, I'll be leaving. Su Rongrong pulled me back.
Wait, since third sister came all this way, have a cup of tea.
I said, sure. Chengdu's face looked very pale. He hesitated to speak. And finally, just as the teacup reached my lips, he suddenly stood up, took my tea, and downed it in one gulp.
All right, this tea is nothing special. Don't drink it. Let's go.
The gloating look on Su Rongrong's face instantly froze. She tugged at Chengdu's hem in worry, whispering,
Are you crazy? How dare you drink this tea?
I cast a puzzled look over. She quickly stopped talking. It seemed this tea was indeed drugged. Young General Cheng's face was somewhat pale. He looked at me.
My apologies. We still have things to do. We'll take our leave first. My general's manor carriage is downstairs. I will have the driver take the young lady back.
Sure. I didn't stay any longer either, and walked out gracefully. Behind me, Su Rongrong's crying could still be faintly heard. You bastard, you promised to help me get even with her. You also said you only loved me. Liar, then why are you so good to her? I imagine Chengdu must be feeling very miserable right now. It must not feel good to be misunderstood by the one you love, right? The taste of that cup of tea probably doesn't feel good either. After all, when I took the teacup from Su Rongrong, I had quietly added a little something extra to it. Heart-devouring powder. When it takes effect, it feels like needles piercing the heart. Those who betray. Sincere love must swallow 1,000 needles. I didn't take the general's carriage. After some thought, I just chose a random path to walk back. As luck would have it, halfway through, a light rain began to fall, pattering softly. While I was taking shelter from the rain under the corridor. Upstairs, a young master in black was admiring the lotuses with a young lady. The lady smiled and pointed, saying, Such a beautiful lotus is indeed a rare sight. They say wearing the first lotus of summer in your hair can bring good luck for the whole year. The young master remained non-committal, neither agreeing nor disagreeing. He simply made a gesture, and a secret guard in black leaped down into the pond to pluck the lotus. As he brushed past me, he respectfully handed that vibrant lotus flower to me. I froze for a moment, subconsciously turning around to look back, and saw that person up on the balcony, Su Rongpei. The young lady's expression turned a bit sour. What is the meaning of this, heir apparent? Su Rongpei lowered his gaze, silently looking down at me. He didn't answer. I knew this was a noble lady the Marchioness had selected for him as a potential match. Seeing the atmosphere grow tense, I offered an explanation. I am his younger sister, the third young lady of the Marquis's household. You have misunderstood, my lady. The young lady's expression softened slightly. So that is how it is. She warmly took my hand. Since you are his sister, then you are my sister as well. Why don't you join us upstairs? Before I even had a chance to decline, she blushed and asked, Do you happen to know what kind of women your brother prefers? She spoke quite loudly, and even Su Rongpei, who was standing nearby, heard her. His expression stiffened for a moment. He stood up and said,
All right, Miss Jiang, there is no need to sit down. My third sister got caught in the rain and needs to return to the manor to change her clothes.
With that, he took my hand without giving me a choice and led me outside. Once we were in the carriage, I said calmly, Why did you use me as a shield? My clothes aren't really wet, and wasting a little time wouldn't have caused me to catch a cold.
Because I didn't like her.
I casually tossed the lotus flower aside. You will like someone eventually, brother. He turned his head to look at a line of white egrets outside the window. After a long silence, he choked out, I won't. After returning, Chao Anhe found out that I had gone to see the young General Cheng. Terrified of the aftermath, she held me tight. Her embrace was like spring dew. Damp, but very warm. She choked up. Could you keep me with you these next few days, please? Chao Anhe, I'm scared. I said, all right. I understood that she was afraid Chengdu would retaliate against me, and she was afraid of losing me. But before we heard anything from the general's manor, Su Ningyuan arrived first. This young master of the Marquis's manor barged into my courtyard aggressively.
Su Mingxi, why did you have to come back? Our family doesn't welcome you. Can't you tell? Ever since you arrived, Mother has regretted taking in the wrong child back then. My sister has also been struggling with guilt and inner conflict. It was enough for our family to have one young mistress. Why did you have to come back and disrupt the harmony?
He shouted angrily.
It is all your fault. You are unwanted.
I didn't look at him. I turned my head to look at Chao Anhe. In our past life, she had been reduced to tears by Su Ningyuan's words, overwhelmed by a sense of guilt. Now, she stood tall and dignified, though her fingertips were tightly clutching her hem inside her sleeve. Seeing her in pain made my heart ache even more. I strode forward, grabbed Su Ningyuan by the collar, and threw a punch right at his face before he could even react.
Su Mingxi, are you crazy?
This punch is on behalf of all the poor orphans in the world who are searching for their parents. It was the hand of fate. You have no right to judge them on whether they should have returned. My eyes turned red with anger. Clenching my fist tightly, I landed a second punch. This punch is for myself. Back then, you were only 3 years old, and naturally playful. It was your biological elder sister who rescued you from the bandits' den, which was how she accidentally got lost. Even before she disappeared, she was still worrying about you. But you cannot take advantage of my tolerance and protection to bully people like this. Su Ningyuan stood frozen in place for a long time.
That is impossible. How could that be? No one ever told me.
He looked utterly lost and soul-shattered as he returned to his room with a bruised face. When news of this spread, the Marchioness said nothing, tacitly condoning my behavior, the messenger maid said.
The Marchioness wishes to see you. Braised fish has been prepared for dinner, and we are only waiting for you, young mistress.
I didn't even look up. I'm not going. Chao Anhe, what about you? She was holding a chicken leg I had just roasted, her cheeks stuffed full. I'm not going either. I realized that I had been running into Su Rongpei more and more frequently lately. He would send me gifts from time to time, and whenever he saw me, he would make a point to stop and chat with me for a bit. When he turned his head, there was even a hint of gentleness in his manner. At the same time, I also heard some rumors. Something had happened to that young lady, and her entire family had relocated to Lingnan. Thus, Su Rongpei's marriage plans were put on hold. Xiao Tao told me in a low voice, the heir has been secretly sending people to investigate your birth chart, but I had no relatives left here. The only person I had any connection to was Chiyu. What could he possibly find out now anyway? As I thought of this name from the distant past, my hand trembled slightly, knowing what was on my mind. Xiao Tao sighed. Back then, the young master killed over a dozen people with his blade for you, yet he still failed to rescue you. He is such an obstinate man. I wonder how he is doing now. I replied that no matter what, we had already missed our chance. Then let us just wish him peace. I did not want to continue this conversation. The 6th month marked the Empress Dowager's birthday, and a special palace banquet was held for it. It was set right by the waterside pavilion. The Duchess was delighted, but she found herself conflicted when choosing fabrics. The senior maid smiled and said, both young ladies look absolutely exquisite in this shoe brocade. Mother pondered for a moment. In that case, Rongrong shall wear the shoe brocade. As for Mingxi, this blue silk is elegant and dignified. It suits her much better. Su Rongrong threw herself into Mother's arms, acting spoiled, while I simply nodded. It was a happy outcome for everyone. The Duchess was in a rare good mood. When arranging the carriages, she purposely had me sit with her. You are quite unlike Rongrong. When she was little, Rongrong loved to lie on my lap. The two of us would chat in the carriage for hours. At this palace banquet, I originally intended to ask the Empress Dowager to bestow a marriage upon you, but you have a quiet temperament, which does not quite match young General Cheng. After giving it some thought, it would be better for Rongrong to marry him. She took my hand and smiled. They have been childhood sweethearts for so many years. I know she will be absolutely thrilled. I smiled as well. Actually, you treat me quite poorly. The Duchess's smile instantly froze on her face. With a trembling voice, she asked, Mingxi, what did you say? I did not want to repeat myself a second time. I simply smiled and turned my face away. It is nothing. Perhaps it was because such words had never been spoken to her so bluntly before. When the Duchess stepped out of the carriage, her eyes were dark and hollow. She seemed completely dazed, even forgetting the ceremony to request the imperial marriage decree. Su Rongrong walked beside me. She stared at me for a moment, then suddenly stopped in her tracks. I had a dream a few days ago. In the dream, we were also at the Marquis's manor, but there was one thing I found highly suspicious. At this point, she paused. My expression instantly turned cold. Oh, what was it? She drew a small wooden box from her sleeve and waved it in front of me. Are you curious? Come closer, and I will show you. My heart tightened, and I could not help taking a few steps toward her. The next instant, she threw the wooden box into the river. Taking advantage of my distraction, she shoved me in with all her might. Sumingsi, one should not be so greedy. You want everything, and you have stolen everything from me. It is time to return justice to me. The moment I sank to the bottom of the river, I held my breath and slowly swam upward, breaking the surface of the water. At that moment, Surangrang's expression didn't change at all. She was still looking at me with a mocking smile. I frowned. What on earth are you trying to do? Just as I was about to call for a maid to take me to the side hall, a man suddenly walked out from the opposite side. I recognized him as Wang Runja, the Empress Dowager's nephew. He was notoriously dissolute and lecherous. His mouth gaped open, and seeing me completely drenched, a hint of lust indeed flashed in his eyes. Just as I was about to knock him unconscious, he had already shouted out loud, Isn't this the young lady of the Marquis's manor? Wang Runja was very clever. As soon as he shouted, everyone gathered around. My heart tightened. The next instant, Su Rongpei leaped over, quickly took off his coat and draped it over me. He kicked Wang Runja hard in the abdomen. Get lost. When Su Rongrong saw Su Rongpei, she looked slightly uneasy. As Su Rongpei carried me away, he paused for a moment, turned his head to look at her, and said with extreme coldness, You come with me too. When the Marchioness found out about this major incident, she was too shocked to speak. After leaving a message for the Empress Dowager, the family hurriedly prepared the carriage and returned to the manor. When we arrived in front of my courtyard, I froze for a moment. Su Rongpei looked down at me, his voice gentle. Go and freshen up. Father, mother, and I will wait for you in the main courtyard. I nodded. His grip tightened slightly, and he set me down. He spoke as if nothing had happened at all. But the rumors, after all, began to spread like wildfire. While I was changing my clothes, Chao Anhe kept her eyes cast down as she helped me tie my hair ribbon. Su Rongrong did this. I gave a soft hum of agreement, fearing she would worry. I added, It doesn't really matter. After this incident, everyone in the Marquis's manor will give up on her completely. Once she marries into the general's manor in the future, I have countless ways to make her meet with an accidental death. As for me, I've only lost a marriage prospect. The rest of my life is so long. Don't worry. Maybe. Chao Anhe suddenly hugged me tightly and said in a muffled voice, I don't believe you. The one he wants to marry is the daughter of the Marquis's manor. That means me. It has nothing to do with you. I will go and marry him. My voice was gentle. Chao Anhe, have you forgotten? You still have a regret. You haven't found the person who will treat you with all their heart. What a pity. Your life is still. She shook her head, choking on her tears, unable to speak. No, I found her. She is right here. My eyes welled up with tears, and I turned my head away, unable to say another word. When I stepped into the main courtyard, there were still traces of tears at the corners of my eyes. When Su Rongrong saw me, she sneered. Third sister, young Master Wang has already sent someone to propose marriage. It is the Empress Dowager's decree. The messenger is waiting at the manor gate right now. What are you going to do? Nothing. The thing she misjudged most about me was that I wouldn't collapse so easily. I said calmly, I will marry him as you wish. Is that not enough? I looked at my silent parents sitting at the head of the room, and then at my third brother, who looked as if he wanted to speak but stopped. I smiled faintly and knelt down. Your daughter is willing to marry. The Marchioness could no longer hold back her tears. She took a large step forward and helped me up. It is mother's fault. I have failed you. I am so sorry. The Marquis, however, remained very calm. He asked Su Rongrong, who was standing to the side, Did you really push your sister into the water? Su Rongrong pursed her lips. The third brother said anxiously from the side, Second sister, say something. Tell him it wasn't you. How could you possibly do such a thing? But since the Marquis had asked this way, he must have already found out the truth. Su Rongrong knew she could not defend herself. Moreover, she also knew that the Marquis's household would not do anything severe to her over such a small matter. It was me, she said. Amidst the third brother's shocked and disappointed gaze, the Marchioness wiped her tears and held me even tighter. Just as I was feeling bewildered, Su Rongpei, who had been standing in the corner for a long time, took the marriage contract, hurriedly wrote down a name, and strode outside. Su Rongrong suddenly felt an ominous premonition. Wait, brother. Whose name did you write? Su Rongpei looked at her coldly, unrolled the marriage contract, and threw it into her arms. The Empress Dowager only decreed a marriage with the daughter of the Marquis's household. Young Master Wang does not know either of you, and only knows it is a young lady of this household. Second sister, you must take responsibility for what you have done. In an instant, Su Rongrong felt the world had gone mad. Her eyes widened in shock. What did you say? Father and mother will never agree to this. Third brother won't just watch me be married off like this either. Her voice was stammering. After looking around, she suddenly realized with horror that no one was speaking. Or rather, when Su Rongpei altered the marriage contract, not a single person raised an objection. She felt ice cold all over, stumbling back a few steps, nearly collapsing to the ground. Seeing that Su Rongpei was about to leave, she rushed forward, grabbed his sleeve, and cried out in utter despair, "We have been siblings for so many years. Please, don't do this to me. I know I was wrong, it was all my fault. But if I really marry him, my entire life will be ruined. I beg you, don't be so heartless." By the time she finished speaking, her voice was breaking with sobs. Su Rongpei's hand inside his sleeve clenched tightly. Just as he was about to speak, he met my sarcastic gaze from the side. He looked away and let out a sigh. Seeing his resolute attitude, Su Rongrong began to laugh and cry hysterically. She pointed at me and screamed, "Just for the sake of a woman, you treat me like this. She is the very girl you forcibly kept in your private villa back then. You love her, don't you? Don't think I don't know. You often stare blankly at her portrait. Every time, you have the kitchen send her chilled sweet melons. You even hid many secret guards around her to protect her. And the reason you refuse to choose a consort is because of..." Su Rongpei's face instantly froze. He instinctively glanced toward me. I lowered my gaze and remained silent. The Marquis frowned and waved his hand, ordering several maids to take Su Rongrong away. The Marchioness, already reeling from the first shock, now looked as if she might collapse at any moment. She forced a smile and said, "Rongrong, that child. She has taken to lying now. Rongpei, look into your mother's eyes. Tell me, this isn't true." Su Rongpei remained silent for a long time. A look of pain suddenly crossed his face, and he abruptly pulled up his robe and knelt down. "Father, mother, I have failed heaven and earth. It is not lie." As he finished speaking, he bowed his head to the ground, overwhelmed with shame. I was stunned. He knew full well what the consequences of these words would be, yet he still spoke them. The Marchioness opened her mouth, finding herself struggling to breathe. Meanwhile, the Marquis was furious. He smashed the teacup from the table against Su Rongpei's forehead. "You bastard. She is your biological sister. How dare you harbor such thoughts?" Su Rongpei choked out, "I have loved her since 3 years ago. She is the only person I have ever loved like this in my life. I knew it was impossible between us, but I just wanted to protect her in secret. I never wanted to marry anyone else. If I can never confess my love for my entire life, then what is the point of me being this powerful minister?" The Marchioness looked at me, softening her tone as much as possible. "Mingzi, please step outside first." I nodded, cast one last look at Su Rongpei, and left in a hurry. That night, the sound of caning in the main courtyard went on for a long time, making heavy, dull thuds. After kneeling in the ancestral hall for a long time, Su Rongpei came out, looking exhausted, and happened to see me standing under the paulownia tree. The moonlight climbed up the branches. I smiled at him with curved eyes. "Does it hurt?" He froze for a moment, then shook his head, his gaze never leaving my eyes. I walked ahead, kicking a small pebble along the way. "So, the person who, every evening, placed a small dish of chilled melon by my window was you?" He remained silent. "So did you also help me with that matter at the general's mansion? Answer me." Su Rongpei's eyelashes fluttered slightly, and he spoke in a voice so low it was barely audible. "I just didn't want you to suffer any grievances." He said he didn't want me to suffer grievances. Yet in our past life, the person who wanted to drive me to death the most was also him. Countless times, he watched me suffer, watched me waste away, yet refused to let me go. I smiled faintly. How disgusting. Su Rongpei's face turned instantly pale, his already injured body looking as if it might collapse at any moment. I repeated it again. "Falling in love with your own sister. Su Rongpei. How disgusting. I don't want to see you anymore. I've already told mother. In the future, I will go south to Guzu to live with my maternal grandmother." After saying this, I didn't look into his eyes again, but turned and walked away. I had planned everything well. The Marquis's manor was no longer safe now. A few days ago, I submitted the secret letter Chao Anhe had told me about to the Emperor. The Emperor's wrath was not absent. He was merely waiting for the right moment. During this period, I had acquired quite a few shops, and the money in my hands was enough to squander for a lifetime. Once Chao Anhe and I boarded the carriage heading south, we would discard all our identities and be completely free. But I never expected that Su Rongrong would commit suicide. Before she died, she only met with Su Rongpei. What they said, I had no way of knowing. But that night, the carriage in which Chao Anhe and I were traveling south, we were intercepted by thousands of troops. He whipped the carriage curtain aside. Su Rongpei's cold gaze swept past Chao Anhe and looked at me with a smile. I demanded with a cold face, "Have you lost your mind? Deploying troops without authorization. Do you really think the Emperor won't dare to move against the Marquis's manor?" He shook his head, his tone strangely calm. "Shamingsi, You were my mistress for 10 years in our past life. Do you still not understand my nature? Have I ever truly feared anything? The moment those words left his mouth, my entire body went ice cold. Chao Anhe immediately shielded me and growled, "Go quickly. As your sister, I cannot let you lose your freedom again." Without much hesitation, I quickly seized a swift horse. Without orders, the soldiers did not dare to hurt me. Just as I was feeling relieved, Su Rongpei smiled. He let out a whistle, and the once obedient horse instantly turned around and headed back. As I panicked, Su Rongpei grabbed the reins and pulled me fiercely into his embrace. "What should I say about you? Do you think we share a telepathic bond? Of all the horses here, you just had to choose my personal mount." His lips pressed close to my ear as he whispered softly, "Don't even think about running away. Mingxi, you know what I'm capable of." With just that single sentence, I knew he had also returned from the past life. Once my heart turned to ice, I no longer showed any emotion. In the end, Su Rongpei let Chao Anhe go. Burying his face in the crook of my neck, he sighed. "Now that I've let Anhe leave to start her own new life, Mingxi, please don't hate me anymore. Alright. You have no idea how devastated I was when you lied to me, saying you were my biological sister." His voice was muffled. "Back then, I was even willing to defy the entire world for you." I remained silent for a long time before saying calmly, "Su Rongpei, what lies between us has never been just about that one matter." To her, "You were not a good brother. To me, you were not a good husband. Just like her, I truly cannot find it in myself to forgive you." He fell silent for a long time, and I felt a cold wetness on my neck. When he looked up, he carelessly wiped away the tear at the corner of his eye. "If that is the case, then let us remain entangled. Even if we are entangled for lifetimes, you will still be mine." Su Rongpei let out a faint smile, ordered his men to lock me up, and then turned to leave. I closed my eyes and said nothing more. Reflecting on my past life, I felt I had no regrets left in this life. Heaven was merciful to let me live again, allowing me to free Chao Anhe from her plight and untie my own knots. I was never the one in the wrong. My mind became completely blank, and my body grew weaker and thinner day by day. I refused to eat, and the maids could do nothing with me. Furious, Su Rongpei executed dozens of maids in a row. Hearing of this, a traveling doctor at the gates offered his services on his own accord. He placed his fingers on my wrist, but asked instead, "Does my lady truly have no regrets in this life?" His voice was warm and familiar, so comforting that tears instantly streamed down my face. "I do. My regret was that before leaving, I didn't say a proper word to him. I had left so mercilessly, so coldly, and so desperately wanting not to drag him down with me." The traveling doctor let go of my wrist and said gently, "I have cured your illness, my lady. May you live a long and worry-free life hereafter." I wanted to sit up, wanted to say a word to him, and wanted to look at his face once more, but I had no strength left, and could only watch helplessly as he departed. From that day on, everything changed. First was Su Rongpei. He was injured during the imperial hunt. When he returned, he was drenched in the heavy scent of blood. Later, the Marquis was dispatched to the southern border, only to be besieged by the southern army. That night, Su Rongpei held me in silence for a long time. He said, "Mingxi, could you bear a child for me?" I remained silent. He sighed. "If you had a child, I would die content." The next day, he still volunteered to take the imperial decree and head to the southern border, even though he knew it was a trap. He could not bear to fail his parents' grace. The winter of that year was freezing cold. The southern border was a world of ice and snow. The emperor exerted his pressure, and the Marquis's manor was raided and confiscated. In the end, Su Rongpei never made it back. He sent me a total of 3 letters. In the last one, he wrote that he had dreamed of the child we lost. He gestured with a smile, saying it was a boy with round eyes, who looked just like me. In the spring 3 years later, Chao Anhe and I passed through Bianjing. We both decided to stay the night at an inn. Looking at the traces of our past lives, we felt deep emotions but also a sense of relief, grateful that we had truly found a good ending. That day, I passed by a sugar painting stall. A young lady was waiting in line in front of it. I recognized her as the eldest princess. Just as I was about to quietly slip away, the crowd surged, and I stumbled. As I was about to fall, a pair of large, steady hands caught me. Once I regained my footing, he smiled, politely let go of his grip, and said, "Careful, my lady." I was so startled by those words that I couldn't snap out of it. The eldest princess looked over curiously and took his arm. "Chiyu, do you two know each other?" The man in white thought about it carefully, then smiled and shook his head. "No, we do not.